Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the WION-VOA co-production. It's Friday. I'm your host, Susan Tehrani, coming to you live from New York City. We are 2 weeks into the new Trump administration, and changes are coming in fast. President Donald Trump is widely expected to impose tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada as early as February 1st. As part of a plan, he says, will boost the U.S. economy. But with much about the specifics still unknown, economists, business owners, and everyday consumers are still trying to understand how it could impact them. Johnny Fernandez reports from New York City.
President Donald Trump says the U.S. is being treated unfairly by its international partners, and he is ready to use the full force of the nation's economic power to change that.
Tariffs will make our country rich.
The president threatened hefty levies against any nation that refuses his demands, whether they be combating illegal immigration and drug trafficking or decreasing U.S. trade imbalances. Economists have mixed feelings about how tariffs could impact the U.S. economy and consumers.
A tariff strategy can be implemented in such a way that the cost largely falls outside the country.
Economist James Galbraith says Trump's tariffs could help bring back jobs to U.S. industries. By making foreign goods more expensive, the goal is to reduce reliance on imports and strengthen domestic manufacturing. But some economists argue that tariffs diminish the economy's potential.
In the long run, tariffs will produce more uncertainty. From the business point of view, no business owner wants to invest in a country that might face tariffs now or in the future.
On his first day in office, Trump said he was thinking about imposing a 25% tariff on goods from Mexico and Canada starting February 1st. This past weekend, he also threatened and then backed off from imposing similar tariffs on Colombia. Critics warn that such tariffs will have an immediate impact on American families and business owners. They say the cost of tariffs on everyday items like groceries, clothing, and coffee would get passed on to consumers.
We've been growing coffee in Colombia now for about 150 years, 160. We've had our farm in our family now for close to 80 years.
Jonathan Echeverry, owner of Paper Plane Coffee Company just outside of New York City, worries that if tariffs are imposed on Colombian goods, as Trump recently threatened, he will be forced to pass the higher cost on to customers.
Right now, we're actually in a bit of a coffee crisis where the price of commodity coffee is at the highest it's been in 50 years. So adding on top of that, a 25% potential tariff or even a 50% potential tariff will just exacerbate things.
Tariff advocates say it's not always the consumer who picks up the tab.
That may well be the case, but not necessarily always. I have to ask how the foreign suppliers are going to react. And in some circumstances, they may react by cutting their profit margins and trying to maintain their market share.
As the threat of tariffs on Mexico and Canada looms, Americans are bracing for the possible impact on their jobs, businesses, and prices they pay. Johnny Fernandez, VOA News, New York.
VOA's Jessica Stone joins us live now from the White House with additional reporting. Hi, Jessica. Talking of tariffs, what's the possibility of tariffs on Indian products here?
Well, a very real possibility, because this week we heard President Donald Trump give an address to House Republicans at their conference saying, quote, India, China, and Brazil are in a list of countries that are, quote, tremendous tariff makers. And he said he would impose tariffs on any country that acts against U.S. interests. During his campaign, of course, he called India, quote, a very big abuser of trade. One particular industry he's focused on is pharmaceuticals, and we know that's a big industry for the nation of India. 60% of the world's vaccines are made in India, and a lot of generic medications are also produced in India. The U.S. looking for more competitiveness in that area, at least under Donald Trump.
And if Washington does end up imposing tariffs, it will increase the cost of goods for most Americans. That's the opposite of what Americans want and voted for. So what's the Trump administration's response to that?
You know, they still have some ardent tariff supporters in this administration. One of them, the new pick for Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, hedge fund manager. He was on the Hill this week during his confirmation hearings in front of the U.S. Senate, and he called that theory, quote, nonsense, the theory that tariffs could cause inflation. He also argues that India and China have the most tariffs and they don't experience inflation. But he did also concede under intense questioning from the senators that specific product prices could go up. Susan?
Jessica, please do stay with us. I want to get your thoughts on the other side of this next story. A small Chinese company sent shockwaves around the tech world this week with news that it has created a high-performing artificial intelligence system with less computing power and at a lower cost than ones made by the United States tech giants. Michelle Quinn reports.
Up to this point, U.S. technology giants have led the global race to build the most advanced artificial intelligence systems. They rely on giant data centers and cutting-edge microchips. And they say they need more money to pay for more energy and more powerful chips. Now comes DeepSeek. The Chinese upstart has created an AI system that matches the performance of ones made in the United States. But DeepSeek says, compared to its American peers, it spent far less money and used less computing power to manufacture its system. The news hit like a bomb across Silicon Valley. DeepSeek's app shot to #1 in the Apple App Store. Stock prices of U.S. tech firms dropped. And Washington, which sees the U.S. in a fierce artificial intelligence race with China, took note.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win.
The U.S. has instituted stiff export controls to stop the highest level chips from making it into China. DeepSeek claims that working within constraints helped it come up with cheaper workarounds.
It is low-cost, frugal innovation that is much faster and much less expensive to use, to both create and use, right? So as such, it will have appeal to a very broad swath.
DeepSeek's breakthrough sent a shudder in Silicon Valley in another respect. It relies on open source technology, which is shared and built upon by coders across firms and countries. That's a different approach from most AI giants, such as OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google, which keep their work under wraps. But 2 years ago, Meta, the parent of Facebook, released the code for Llama, its cutting-edge AI technology, so that others could use it to innovate. DeepSeek used Llama to teach its AI models and then released its technology to the open source community.
The open source community feels very strongly that open source is a very necessary way to go because it democratizes, as it were, the both creation and use of artificial intelligence at lower cost.
Some observers say the advent of DeepSeek calls into question the effectiveness of the United States' recent AI policy. President Donald Trump has said he will make AI a priority. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
Jessica Stone is still with us. Jessica, Washington is raising national security concerns over DeepSeek. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so the U.S. Navy has asked all of its midshipmen and members of the U.S. Navy not to download the platform or the app on its on their phones, and actually it's much more difficult to do that now since the beginning of the week. But possible, the White House crypto czar also says there may be possible intellectual property theft at play. The key concerns really are the censorship that even VOA has witnessed as we've gone through the platform, seeing that if you search up things like the issue of Tibet, which is a public issue, that you get a Chinese narrative on something like that, or even looking up the Chinese president. So there's definitely some censorship going on the platform. And the privacy policy that's released publicly says the Chinese government has access to your ISP, meaning your internet service provider, your personal information, anything that it can get access to when you enter it into it, and it will keep that information. This is different from TikTok because these are Chinese-based servers, and so they're subject to Chinese government influence and control. And the law that Congress passed related to TikTok does let Washington make a platform divest its U.S. operations if it qualifies as a threat. So we may see that same law come into play here.
Jessica, speaking of TikTok, what's the latest on that?
Yeah, so it's still not clear that TikTok is going to sell. It has that 75-day window to do so under the extension provided by the Trump administration. And there are groups of investors getting their act together to sort of make a play for it. We know that Trump has talked about Microsoft being one of those companies. There's also a group that just emerged, according to Bloomberg, a guy named Jesse Tensley, who's a tech entrepreneur, put together a group of U.S. investors, which includes a YouTuber named Mr. Beast, someone from Roblox, the online video game, and someone from Anchorage Digital, the company there. They're raising about $20 billion in contrast to Project Liberty, which has already raised $25 billion. That includes the LA Dodgers baseball team owner and Shark Tank personality Kevin O'Leary, who's also from Canada. Trump, again, putting Microsoft in the mix, but again, not clear at all that TikTok will sell and really that it will meet the obligations under U.S. law in the time frame in order to do so. So something we're definitely closely watching, these Chinese apps, the tendency for national security concerns in the U.S. government and really more broadly across the world, Susan.
All right, Jessica, thank you so much for all of that. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good.
The bill faces significant criticism.